All right, so we are just going to continue on with chassis here. Now, like I showed you, I think the other day, we have got a bit of an issue with our chassis just here. We need to, where that swoops up, we need to alter our radiator mount or cross support. Not too much for an issue, I don't think. Somewhere here, we'll just plate that in with an angle to get that to clear the chassis. Engineer was happy enough with that. All right, so just got the cab sitting back on there. Now, didn't show you anything, so I just need to get things done, but I have solved my issue. My body mounts are now sitting back where they need to, as far as this little cutout for the chassis. I've basically notched it out, a little triangular notch like that. So we've got clearance on both of them now. So body fits really, really well. All them bolts just slide straight in. I've got clearance, nothing tight on the chassis, so that works well. But we're moving over to engine mounts at the moment because they are a little bit trickier. Now they've got angles both ways, so they've got a degree that way in and also back. So I've documented all that. I've marked my centers, I've marked where we need to go back, so we need to buff a bit of paint off, and we need to get these mounts off. They're a bit more, they're going to be a bit of a pain in the ass actually to unstitch these without attacking the chassis or the mount. It wasn't actually as bad as I thought it would have been. So I've got the top one with the grinder, bottom one just nipped off with the grinder. Basically ran the recipro down inside. You can see the scuff marks here, but nothing that's going to be detrimental to the strength. So yeah, nice metal blade, new metal blade down each side. So I think we're pretty well good to tack this second one on. It's really not a one-person job because I can't clamp anything because the shapes are so on the piss. Apologies for that. Just checking out some other clearances. Like I was saying, I can't clamp anything with C-clamps or anything because it's such an odd shape. So I'm holding it, trying to get angles, trying to get heights. But I think this one should be a little bit easier. I've got my angles, the piece of paper's over there. 31 degrees, that's pretty well spot on. Now I need the height. That's pretty good too. These six, like I was saying before, are all the same height, so that's my datum. So I've marked that height on the shed, and I've marked the height of my engine mounts. As soon as them engine mounts were cut off, I had nothing to go back on. So I need a reference in case, for instance, something gets knocked. I end up having to move this for some reason. So I need the chassis to be level. I don't necessarily have to keep it at that height, but I need the difference between these six that are the same and that. That way I can get these six level at any height. And then as long as I use the same difference measurement from that, I'll be right for them. So, what I was saying before, I'm just going to heat these up across here and just gently fold that over, so then I can just tack that onto the top. Same with this one, heat it up across there, tap it over. I'll have to trim that back a bit, but yeah, I think that's going to be the best option. So now with
all mounts done except for the trans. Tacked on. Need to concentrate on what we need to do for this trans mount now. Maddie has machined up a couple of bosses for me. And after a bit of brainstorming between Matt, Stewie and myself, and the engineer, we're going to make an adapter plate basically that mounts off of, I've just put that drop box in to get measurements and heights. I'm going to use a piece of 20 by 130 flat bar. Well, I think it'll come as a 20 by 200 or whatever it may be, and get Matt to machine it with a step. I'll show you so it makes sense on the drawing. So pick up those 4 bolts at the front, the original ones, and the plate will extend back, and then there'll be a welded boss in the back of the chassis to pick up one of the 4, and then at the back. First things first, Matt is getting each bit of steel down to the right dimensions overall. So he's milled the ends, just doing the sides now.
There you go.
What's next?
Next we are facing, getting it down to a square, parallel bit of bar.
Next thing to do is machine this section down. Now I want to put a radius in here so it doesn't cause stress issues from this point.
Just gets my edge finding, so I know where the edge of the material is in the cutter.
So now we are drilling some holes. Because these are a mirror image, we just put some yellow holes so I don't get confused because we're dum-dum. And then Matt does all the precise stuff with his keyboard over here.
And 29, is that right?
really nice. But how good is this? It will all make sense when we get back into the shed. Why some of them are threaded, some are the step, the radius. It all makes sense. Okie dokie. So Matt was kind enough to machine these plates up for me. So it's pretty well the last piece of the puzzle as far as our mounts go, body mounts and engine mounts and trans mounts. So I'll just run you through what we've done and why we've done it. And then we're gonna install them. And I really need to get that motor and trans back in over here, make sure everything's lined up Mickey Mouse. Also want to check out clearances from the brace diff to the underside of the sump to make sure all of that stuff lines up as well. Will not line up so much, just the clearances for flex and whatnot, because the next step is bump stops and I need to set heights and whatever for that. So yeah, it's all kind of important stuff that's got to happen now. The reason we did that radius there was so it didn't have a potential fracture or stress point with a direct 90-degree angle in there. So that will spread the stress out more and be less likely to crack. Now, I'm not concerned about it at all, but less likely to crack straight down there with vibrations over time. So he ran his cutter bit straight through here and got that radius, and then basically put his bigger cutter piece on. I'm not that good with terms on the old mill, but a bigger cutter piece, and then machined this down to leave this 10 mil higher than this. So this part is actually 9.5 mil. That's 19.5, so that leaves a 10 mil step. After the step and all that was machined down, we had to get hole centers. So I'd measured them off of bottom of the chassis where the mounts are, and also from this, just to double check. So I had all them written down on my notepad, and then I took the drop boxes with us just to double check again, or triple check. That's what these paint marker marks are, just to make sure, because they're mirror image, we didn't want to get mixed up and molded up with holes. So yeah, that was the basis of how it happened. Very happy with it. Obviously needs to be powder coated still, or coated with something. And this is it installed. Now, if I can show you here. Now this is lying in the car looking towards the back. That's the rear diff. So these are obviously the standard ones, standard line for the transmission cross member across here. These are my new ones, 175 mil back, like I keep saying. This one here is just a 16 mil hole. The reason that is a hole and not a thread, these three are all threaded. So this one here will actually have a boss that'll get welded into the chassis. The reason for that is so that there is something picking the back of this plate up. Like, that's quite a big span from my last bolt hole here to here. I have a feeling that would fatigue somewhere and end up drooping or sagging. So there will be a boss line I'm going to mark it, drill a hole in the bottom of the chassis. I'll show you when I do this, but drill a hole in the bottom of the chassis and then weld that boss in, so that bolt will go straight through this and locate into the chassis to hold that end up. The other three, transmission cross member, just bolt straight to it. So that will be a longer bolt compared to these three. And that side is just a mirror image.